get going on this, all right? So we are here to talk about the Cloud Pro, specifically the webinar entitled Get to Know the Cloud Pro. Before we get into that, let's just do a little bit of an introduction. So about me first, I am Brian Laws. I am a cloud architect at Summit 7 Systems, and you can see some information on there about me and the blogs that I write. I do blog at summit7systems.com. The URL is there for that. I'm also on Twitter, although I don't really post that much or tweet that much. Feel free to reach out to me there. My email address is on the screen. You'll see in the lower left something that I'm particularly proud about. Just last week, Ben Curry, Microsoft MVP, Ben Curry, and I just published a book. We just created one with Microsoft Press. Came out last week called From IT Pro to Cloud Pro, Microsoft Office 365 and SharePoint Online. And it should be pretty applicable to today's conversation. Also, as you see on the lower right, I am one of the co-hosts of the SharePoint Sherpa Show. So it's a bi-weekly podcast that I do with my coworker, Michael Piggott. And if you're interested, there's a URL there to subscribe, as well as we're on Facebook and on Twitter. So Twitter is probably your best way to reach out to us. So just a little bit about Summit 7 Systems. So we are a Microsoft partner. We're a gold partner in cloud productivity, collaboration and content, and digital advertising spaces. We are a managed partner, actually, one of the few, it's kind of an elite status for the Southeast. You'll see a little bit of information about us. One of the things we are proud about is we do have one of our partners, our founders, is Ben Curry, who is something like 12-time MVP. So he's great to have on board, great resource. So good reason to give us a call sometimes. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this thing. Okay. So what are we here for? We're here to talk about the Cloud Pro. So what is a Cloud Pro? You probably haven't heard the term, and for good reason for that. That's something that we've really only recently started developing the concept of. It started last fall in 2015 when I was talking with Ben Curry about the future of the IT Pro in light of the whole cloud phenomenon. We really were thinking about, all right, well, what kind of skills are needed to do the cloud? And then we realized that it really doesn't fit into a specific role that we traditionally see. So although it probably aligns most closely with the IT Pro, it really is more than that. It is the IT Pro, but there's dev aspects to it, traditional dev aspects, but at the same time, it's not quite dev. So it's really a combination of the two. And so we've come up with the term Cloud Pro to describe it. Really an IT Pro with developer skills. So what does that look like? Okay, well, the Cloud Pro needs to be able to understand infrastructure, needs to be able to write scripts, really need to be able to understand identity. They usually need to be comfortable in Visual Studio. They need to do source control. Basically, the Cloud Pro, again, takes some of those aspects of the dev and adds it to the fundamental skills of an IT Pro. I'll give you an example. This is actually an example we use in the book. So an on-premises SharePoint administrator has a whole big variety of PowerShell scripts that they have available to them. It's quite a large number of commandlets, and they're very powerful. When you're in SharePoint Online, the SharePoint Online administrator doesn't have all those commandlets available. The list of them is quite small, actually, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're not needed. And so the problem, though, is you have that gap, right? You have the gap between what needs to be done and the commandlets. And in this particular scenario that we discuss in the book, it's when you're using DLP, which is data loss prevention. One of the key things is that the content needs to be crawled. So you actually have to be able to crawl all the lists and libraries. Well, there's a setting that's on each list and library that you can actually disable crawling. Well, that's a problem if you're doing DLP, because how are you going to be able to run DLP if you're not crawling it? And so we have a script in the book that goes through and shows how to do how to update everything to make sure that no crawl flag is turned off. Well, although that's done with PowerShell, it's not doable with straight SharePoint Online commandlets. In fact, what we had to do is we had to use the client side object model, or the CSOM. We actually had to basically use PowerShell like a programming language. And it's very closely patterned on off of what you would do in C#. And in fact, you could do the same kind of thing inside of a C# code, just a little chunk of code. And so your traditional IT pro would not have likely been able to do such a thing because they're not normally familiar with coding and using object models and the APIs in order to do their work. So your Cloud Pro is going to find themselves more and more likely to find these kinds of scenarios because they don't have the same level of access that they would have traditionally had in an on-premises environment. The Cloud Pro needs to be able to understand the concepts of the cloud, right? Like infrastructure as a service, IaaS, or platform as a service, PaaS, or software as a service, SaaS. And you really need to be able to understand when to use each. They need to know hybrid, and really, like with the example before, you need to think in terms of scripting and automation a lot of times because you are remote, right? You're not actually on the systems. The concept of disposable computing is pretty new with the cloud. It's a concept that I heard about a gentleman from Amazon AWS, Scott Zimmerman, I believe his name was. He introduced me to that concept of disposable computing. And it's a new model that the cloud gives us in which we can stand up and tear down any kind of computing element rapidly. And that can radically change the way we do IT. Understanding that concept and knowing how to use that in your environment, that's really the area that a Cloud Pro can bring to the table and really kind of revolutionize how they do IT. So the Cloud Pro, their focus is frequently on building a patchwork of cloud services which modern businesses need in order to be efficient, resilient, and cost conscious. They build the bridges which allow their customers to reap all the cloud benefits. All that yummy cloud goodness is usually what the Cloud Pro brings to the table. So that kind of begs the question, well, what about the IT Pro? Well, I'm one of you, right? If you're an IT Pro, you're part of my tribe, all right? I have been an IT Pro for a long time. I still consider myself an IT Pro at heart. I'm one of you. I get you. I love you guys, but we got to talk. As Ben and I have been looking at this, at the industry and where things are going, we hate to say it, but we believe that the days of the 100% on-premises IT Pro, we think they're numbered. We think that it's just going to become a part of the job is to be able to understand the cloud and become a Cloud Pro. Now, the IT Pro isn't going to really go away. They're still going to be needed, the 100% on-prem IT Pro. But I think it's going to be comparable to COBOL, right? COBOL programmers are still needed. They're still valuable. You can actually have a good career on it. You can get paid well being a COBOL programmer. Now, trying to find a job and having a lot of options of it as a COBOL programmer is probably going to be a bit tough, right? You're not going to be able to pick just working in your old place. So your options are going to be decreased if in the future if you don't have cloud skills. But again, it's still you'll still have opportunities. They're just not going to be as numerous as a Cloud Pros. Now, the old school IT Pro probably will be able to handle this just fine. They're used to the command prompt. They have a lot of the important fundamental skills already. They're probably already comfortable with code. But a lot of the modern IT Pros that are dependent upon a UI, they're probably going to be lost without this UI. And I think these modern UI-centric IT Pros are going to have a hard time transitioning in the future if they are not able to pick up a lot of these skills. It's these IT Pros that I think are going to be in trouble. So when it comes to the Cloud Pros, I think there's going to be a lot of diversity There's going to be a lot of diversity around what type of Cloud Pro that you want to be. You can really specialize in a lot of areas. So, for example, there's the Microsoft stack, right? The Microsoft Cloud. You can specialize in that stack and make a good living, at least for now, on that stack. Would include Azure, Office 365, all of those pieces. At the same time, there's also the Amazon AWS stack. There's the Google stack. You can, as a Cloud Pro, specialize and focus on one of these major vendor categories. You can also, if you wanted to do infrastructure as a service, that is definitely a place you can specialize as well, at least for a time. I think IaaS is going to eventually dwindle in importance as PaaS and SaaS rise. But nevertheless, the IaaS is still is a very important piece of the cloud, and you can still use the cloud in a lot of ways like an extension of your data center. And the skills that you have as an IT pro in the data center are going to translate fairly well to the cloud, except there's going to be additional aspects to it. Now, that's just one of those places you can specialize if you want to. You can also specialize on a SaaS offering like Office 365. So you can very much become an Office 365 administrator or Office 365 Cloud Pro. At the same time, you can be a generalist, right? You don't have to pick a specialty. A lot of companies will have their foot in, both the Microsoft and AWS stack, for example. And you're going to probably need to at least understand a bit of both. So you don't have to specialize, but you certainly can. Now, one of the things that's going to be a challenge with this is the pace of change. Really, the internet, man, that thing goes quick. The Cloud Pro is going to have to deal with growth at the pace of the internet. In traditional on-premises systems, you might have an upgrade once every 3 years, say. Sometimes it's once every 5 years. And you can get comfortable as an IT pro there, right? So, we're a SharePoint company. That's a lot of what we do anyways. So take SharePoint, okay? So SharePoint 2010 comes out. Okay, I need to learn SharePoint 2010. Great, that's a learning curve for me. I gotta get out there, figure it out. Okay, I've now got after maybe a while, you say, okay, I've got 2010 figured out. I'm good now, right? I can coast until the 2013 comes out in, say 2 years. That's not going to really be possible going forward. You really aren't going to be able to sit back on your laurels with the cloud because it is constantly changing. It's an evergreen service, right? And you don't have control when those changes are going to be made. And so it can actually be a rather frightening, rather daunting situation to be in as a Cloud Pro because things change so fast. So that is one of the things that you need to keep in mind as you pursue a Cloud Pro future, is be willing and able to commit to improving yourself, to invest in yourself and your skills, to ongoing training, do stuff like keeping up with blogs and podcasts and all that stuff. You're going to need to be able to keep yourself current to whatever's going on in the cloud. Now, there are a lot of hard skills that are needed. Now, the hard skills that the Cloud Pro needs, they're really going to be heavily dependent upon the area specialization. The stuff that I have here on the slide are going to be areas that are probably are hard skills that are going to be needed regardless of where you are in the stack. And this is only just some of them, right? This is the high level. But it is still a very technical role, right? The Cloud Pro, just like the IT Pro and the Dev, they are very technical roles. The first is the differences between the IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS architectures. You're going to need to understand how they work, how they're different from each other. You're going to need to understand when to work with what, right? So traditionally, we would just build a VM and deploy stuff in the VM. Well, going forward with the cloud technologies, platform as a service is going to become even more important than it has been. applications are going to be built differently, right? It's going to be taking advantage of these various services that a vendor has provided and patching them together. Same with SaaS. And so the Cloud Pro doesn't necessarily want to always run to a VM, but should be willing and able to talk in terms of platform as a service and software as a service as needed. There's also, major architectural differences and product differences between the main vendors. What's different between Microsoft? There's a lot of services that are the same between Microsoft and Azure and AWS, for example. But there's a lot that's the same, but there's also a lot of products that are different between Azure and AWS. So, you're going to have some services that only AWS provides, for example. So even though you're a Microsoft Azure Cloud Pro, as an example, you're going to want to keep your ear to the ground to kind of just keep track of what's going on with the other vendors, so that just in case your company may decide to start diversifying and start using the other services, you're going to want to at least know what's going on out there. Already talked about PowerShell. Man, PowerShell is going to be so important. It doesn't have to just be PowerShell, but it's the primary one. But there are other scripting tools out there, CLIs, command line interfaces, and it is going to be very important as you go forward. You're going to need to really understand PowerShell, how to work with it according to best practices as well. Identity management is one of those really critical, important pieces that you're going to have to really understand as a Cloud Pro. One of the legs, I think, on which the cloud walks is identity. It is critical. And so you're going to have to understand the different types of identities. Stuff like you see there, like SAML, OAuth, WS-Fed, or Federation. You're also going to have to get familiar with the vendor identity synchronization tools like Microsoft DirSync or Azure AD Connect. Very important. Don't skimp on your understanding of identities. Performance profiling and monitoring is always going to be the case. The difference is going to be where and how you would monitor your systems. This stuff is out on the internet, right? And so the bottleneck is going to be in a different place than you may have traditionally known it to be. Mentioned Visual Studio before. Doesn't have to be Visual Studio, it could be other IDEs, but you are probably going to have to be getting comfortable with using those because, again, you're going to have to dip into code here and there. I think at a minimum, you're going to want to learn to at least know how to read the primary development languages used by your organization. And it may be that you're writing some little bit of code in order to do your work, and you want other people in the company to be able to support you and come alongside you. But at the same time too, it could be that you could use say if you have developers and staff, you can use your developers to help you out. So if you're at least proficient, or at least you don't have to be an expert necessarily in, say, C#, but you should at least be able to read it and be able to have a conversation with your coworkers, so you can understand what they do. You can do code review if needed, and that you can just at least be able to talk on the same level. Networking is probably the other major leg on which the cloud walks. It is so important. You're going to at least need to understand networking at a medium level. Cloud security is critical. I keep saying everything's critical because, well, they are. But the technologies, the hard skills for cloud security are really going to be dependent upon the tool that's used, the platform, and what they have available. So security is, like, for example, with Azure, there's they have various tools in there, various gateways. Office 365 has the Security and Compliance Center. There's the Advanced Threat Protection, all of that. So you're going to want to get to know those. JSON and XML. I mean, I imagine everybody already knows XML. But JSON, that's still on the newer side of things. JSON is a standard, a document standard that is very heavily used in the cloud. You're going to see, for example, the Azure Resource Manager, if you're doing Azure. The templates are built using JSON. A lot of web services are getting, they're talking over JSON. So JSON is going to be something that you're going to have to be able to read with ease, really. Certificates are also going to be an important piece going forward, so make sure you understand how to work with them. Earlier we talked about the idea of disposable computing. So along with that, one of the things that makes it more easy and doable is using something like desired state configuration. So DSC or another declarative config technology like Chef, something like that will make that whole work a lot easier. And you can really get to that ultimate state where you want to be in of cattle, not pets. All right, so cattle, you don't name cattle, right? They're just out there. They're you know, it's sorry for any vegetarians or whatnot, but they're out there to be used, right? You don't name your cattle. You do name your pets because they have a special spot in your heart, right? You know where they are. You care about them. Well, in the cloud world with this disposable computing, you don't want to get to that point where you necessarily know all the server names, for example, because you should hopefully have a design and a deployment such that the individual server names just don't matter. So in that instance, you have cattle, virtual machine cattle, instead of individual named bespoke VMs that are like pets. So moving forward, we're looking at time. Source control, please use it. Most IT pros don't use source control. I think in the Cloud Pro, this is a skill that's going to be necessary going forward. You're going to be glad you did. For Microsoft Azure Cloud Pros, I'd call on Azure out particularly because that's near and dear to my heart. That's what I work with. So if you are an Azure guy, you're going to have to know Azure Active Directory, and you're going to have to know it really well. Same with if you have a hybrid environment and you're on premises, if you're going to have to know Azure AD Connect. It's going to be critical to making your identity story work. When it comes to storage, networking, and compute, you're going to need to know how to do that in Azure in a way that's performant and fault tolerant. You're going to need to know about premium storage, for example, how to make stuff stay online. Azure Resource Manager, I mentioned that before. That's going to be an important place, as well as just your standard what you normally do as in the Cloud Pro, stuff like backups, right? You're still going to do a lot of that kind of stuff as a Cloud Pro. So you're going to need to get familiar with the services that provide that kind of thing, like Azure Recovery Services or the Operations Manager management suite. So these are some of the high level, some of the hard skills that a Cloud Pro is going to need. Now, soft skills are going to be just as important. Very, very important. A lot of these that are on here are going to be just concepts that a systems architect needs to understand. These are nothing new. Hopefully, actually, in fact, a lot of these skills the IT pro already has. And let me put it this way, I think the successful IT pro has these skills. And so these are ones that, again, are well known and understood in the industry, but they become even more critical in the cloud world, particularly when there are resources that are outside your control, right? You can't go and hug that computer over there. It's not in the back room or in the data center. It is out there up in the cloud and is owned and run by somebody else. And so these soft skills become even more critical when you don't have that direct control. So again, disposable computing, I keep banging that drum, but it is a good one. So that is something that you're going to have to understand. Loosely coupled architectures, that is an architecture model of the cloud that is going to be critical in getting high resiliency and high scale in the cloud. You simply architect and design software differently, at least most times anyways, differently than you would on premises to take advantage of these available features and services that are out there in the cloud that you can take advantage of. Oh wow! I just saw the time. Time's running away from us. Okay, so just as you can see here, I'll just run over these real fast. So scaling, we just talked about scaling. Definitely going to have to understand the ways you can do that. When you look at your workloads that you have to support, take a look. Does it even fit for the cloud? Well, you have to analyze that workload to see if it fits, or if it's supposed be better to do just as lift and shift into VMs, or if it should be rebuilt and using a PaaS or a SaaS solution. ROI is going to be important, and so you're going to have to analyze the full cost of moving to a cloud and a cloud solution. Application lifecycle management, the software development lifecycle. Like I said, these are important because these are systems that a lot of times aren't run by you, and so you're going to have to really understand what that means when you're supporting and maintaining a system. You're probably going to have to do some workload migration, right? So the goal is to move into the cloud for a lot of organizations. So you're going to have to figure out how to do that. And although that's a technical exercise, it's the hardest part is the non-technical. It's the planning, it's testing, it's understanding the needs of the business. It's working with the users, it's coordination. So really then the major soft skill that's required is the ability to collaborate well with your business users. The IT pro and the dev should already have this, but it's going to be even more important in the cloud because of the direct access that the business user has to getting the cloud services, right? They can spin up cloud services, and also you have to support it. So you're definitely going to need to make sure you have good relationships with your end users. So we are pretty much out of time, but so if you're interested in getting started, again, I'll do a shameless promotion. So Ben Curry and my book, From IT Pro to Cloud Pro, I do, of course, recommend that, but I'm also a little bit partial. There is a lot of really great documentation out there from Microsoft and Amazon. Take advantage of it. TechNet has got some really, really good stuff. There are also free subscriptions available, so get a subscription and just simply try it out. If you have an MSDN, you're going to get monthly allotment of dollars that you can spend in Azure. So spin stuff up. Play with it, kick the tires, just mess around, right? That's one of your best ways of learning how to do all this stuff. There are also partners like Mindsharp and Combined Knowledge are partners for Summit 7 Systems. There's also, Pluralsight is great. There's a lot of people out there that can help by giving training. And there's also tons of blogs, tons of podcasts. Take advantage of them with how fast everything moves in the cloud. I think these types of ways of getting training are going to be increasingly important. And I'll again plug the SharePoint Sherpas show. We do, it's not just SharePoint, we also talk Azure as well and other cloud stuff. And we are a little over time, so I'm going to go ahead and say thank you very much. I appreciate that you guys were able to join us, guys and gals, I'm sorry. By all means, if you people, I don't know, I keep messing that up. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Summit 7 Systems. Be happy to help and answer questions. We're also hoping to make this into a little bit of a series. We're going to do 2 more sessions on the Cloud Pro. So if there's something you want to hear more about, or place you want to dig into further, then please let us know, and we can look at incorporating that into future webinars. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate that. And on screen is other ways to connect with Summit 7 Systems. So, Twitter. We actually have some stuff on YouTube. Of course, our website, and we're also there on LinkedIn. So, by all means, please connect up with us. We'd love to talk to you further. So, with all that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.